Hello, and welcome to From the Producer's Office. I am not James Clutton, though I often wish I was. I'm Petroc Trelawny, and I'm delighted to be here as guest presenter of this very special 100th edition of the From the Producer's Office podcast, turning the tables and chatting to dear James. And here we are in Bloomsbury. It's winter, so we can't be in Holland Park. Well, it's nearly winter. And we're in Honey & Co., which is a fabulous restaurant doing great food from the Middle East, who, of course, sometimes keep your audience filled.
They do, very well.
Filled with food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's fantastic.
There's lots to talk about over the next 50 minutes. I want to talk about you and your route to Opera Holland Park and where you see the company as being right now. But let's start with this podcast, because I thought it all began in lockdown in COVID, but it actually started a bit earlier than that.
It was 2019 season. We were looking at various things, and I just really fancied a podcast then. Even though we're filming this one, I don't really ever feel that visual. So it was really nice to have a recorded thing, just audio. And I was meeting so many fascinating people every day of our working lives, as you do. And it just seemed a lovely thing to record some of it. And to, and it's never going to be anything but a niche podcast, but I think it really had added something to say. And we started in 2019. It was pretty successful, but in 2020 with lockdown, when everyone was free, it became a lot better because you could get anyone to come on as a guest because everyone was at home.
Yeah, so we got to see inside the sitting rooms of a lot of famous people. Do you remember when we started doing podcasts in lockdown and no one really thought about what was behind them? Yeah. And then suddenly people got much more conscious about the titles on their bookshelves and things that people might pause and zoom in. And, oh gosh, is he really reading that?
Well, it was weird because we filmed them all on Zoom, but we only put the audio out. So I've got all the evidence on all of those things. So, I've got those things to bring back at any point I might choose to in the future.
I sense part of it was you wanted an exchange of ideas. It wasn't one person interviewing another. It was two people sharing thoughts, sharing beliefs, sharing passions.
I think the thing is, when you and I don't cast aspersions on either of us, but you and I have sat across from different bars around London talking about things that are happening, how to react to things. And it was just trying to get as close to that as possible. It's not always easy when you're in front of someone. Tonight it's much more difficult for me talking to you like this than if we were out. But I think it was that idea of having a conversation, and doing audio ones was even easier because the machine's pretty small. You just start talking to people and they sort of forget. But it was because there were so many ideas that the arts coverage in newspapers is very small these days. Apart from your good service on Radio 3 and some other classic broadcasters, there's not that much space. Yeah. So it was a nicer time going to that sort of longer read, as it were. Having someone on your show and talking about ideas and having to rush through and just hit the bullet points that you needed to in a 3-minute interview. Yeah.
And you wanted to cast it with people who might be singers, might be directors, might run opera companies, might have a more tangential approach or connection with opera.
Yeah, I think it started off really us trying to promote our shows, which it was fine, but there's not that much depth in that. So the more you spoke to people, and particularly in lockdown, that was great because there were some real classical music icons of the early 21st century. Tom Allen, Mark Elder, all these people were around, and I knew them by then. So then they had time and I had time, and it was just lovely to hear them talk about things in more detail.
Let's just talk through some of the names. Tell us about the first one, Rodler and Matthew.
Well, that was great because I remember in that, because they often say it back to me. At one point in that podcast, I say, for the two people listening at home. And, but it was just, we were in the middle of a run, and it was a really successful show, Ballet Masquerade. It's coming back next year, it's a Holland Park revival. And we were just sitting backstage. There's all noise of things happening, warming up and everything. And it just felt great. They were really excited about it because the show was on and it was a success. And when you're running a show, you're in a show that's not a success. It's a drag to talk about it. No one wants to do that. But when it's a hit, you feel all the buzz backstage and everyone's excited. And it gave it a bit of momentum straight away. It was a really nice one and sort of made the template of that of just chatting.
And sharing a few of those secrets of what it is like to be in a show, to be making a show.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because, as I say, unless you're doing a marketing thing for a show, you very rarely get to talk about the process. And some of it's interesting, you know, and at different times. And I think the thing about doing recordings of podcasts during the run or in rehearsals is great, because you never know how it's going to end up. You know, and you could look back on it and go, we really got that wrong.
Yeah.
Or that wasn't how it turned out.
So it becomes a bit of the story of the show.
It becomes
a kind of archive.
It's a really lovely thing. And I think that some of the best ones we've done have been after the studio run, the last rehearsal. Everyone's buzzing, everyone's really alive and excited. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't after that. But, you know, there's a moment in time where that's recreated and recorded that was there. And that's how people felt at that moment. It's really nice.
And some great names in here. I mean, Barry Kosky, for example.
He was fantastic, Barry. Yeah. I mean, I don't know Barry that well. For those of you listening who don't know him, he's one of the great opera directors in the world. And I only know him vaguely, but he. There's
no Barry Kosky show that's not interesting in one way or
absolutely, another. And I saw his Magic Flute in Berlin a few years ago, and I met him afterwards, and I was talking to him, and he just was an amazing character. And he came on, and it's just a burst of energy for about an hour. And if ever you're feeling the opera business is not going that well, you just listen to that, and you just feel energized. It's wonderful.
You had Craig Hassel on, who was then running the Royal Albert Hall.
Yep.
Raymond Gubbay, great entrepreneur, brilliant. A man who can truly claim to have, you know, broadened the audience for opera.
I love Raymond, and he was wonderful on that. We recorded it in his apartment, and he's got some brilliant stories about it, and he's got a real love of the art form. You know, he gets criticised sometimes unfairly by people, but he brought a lot of people to opera, and he's fantastic, and still to this day, even though he's not running that company anymore, his own company, he still talks to me and talks about the business, and it's great to have him on there. It's wonderful. And
then singers, of course, lots of singers. Some of them starting out at the relatively early stages of their career. Natalia Romaniw, for example, who I encountered first of all when she was a finalist in Cardiff Singer of the World at St David's Hall, and has gone on to develop this wonderful career. Yeah. And I guess she's sort of now mid-stage, isn't she?
I mean, she's an amazing performer, but we gave her first proper job out of Guildhall. She did Gioeli della Madonna. And even her agent said at the time, she shouldn't be doing this, too big for her too soon. But I just felt that she was right. And the next day, I remember Rupert Christensen gave a review like, it's the best performance of a piece like this since Callas or something. And the agent was still saying, it still wasn't right that she did it. And I was like, well, I think it was probably okay. But she's had a few big hits with us. She hasn't finished with us. We've got unfinished business together, but we're still close. I was at a wedding recently. She's a wonderful performer. And I think that people like her have really remembered that they got a good break with us. And so whilst they can't just keep coming back because of money and positioning, when they can, they do.
Alan Clayton was another great singer. I remember Alan, when COVID started, Alan being very, very honest, perhaps more than many artists, about the nightmare of what happened to people's careers when the work just stopped.
I think also with Alan, he was so, as you say, he was brutally honest, really. And but the thing was that I think it made a lot of singers feel better in a funny way, because they felt if he felt like that, who's sort of the top of the business.
Yeah.
It was okay to feel like that if you were lower down, because if you've got a glittering career at the Royal Opera House and going to the Met and you're still feeling so insecure about work because it dried up completely, I think he did everyone a favour there, really. And he was very honest on the podcast as well. But and it was not long after his Hamlet at Glyndebourne, and so he was really flying high, and then it all came crashing down.
Yeah, and I think he really revealed, or helped reveal, the fragility of the opera singer's career. Even as you say, someone right at the top who is probably getting what would seem to many people like great fees for individual productions from these big houses. But actually, it's still very shaky up there.
Oh, definitely. And I think during COVID, it was really obvious that the business as such was built on sand. And the thing that I was saying a lot of the time, and a lot of people who ran companies were saying, we've learned so much, we're never going to be the same when we go back. But of course, most people sprinted to get back to where they were because that's what they knew. But I genuinely think that we really went in different directions, because I think that we had to just make it a bit more secure, because there's, for people that are listening that don't know, most opera performers get paid per performance only, nothing for rehearsals, nothing for anything. And if you So theoretically, you could do a 6-week rehearsal period, do the first show, and then be ill for the rest. You'd only get one payment for 8 weeks' work. And so we don't do that. We do an all-in fee through performances. We're very open about not docking people's money immediately unless it's on for the whole run, because I think that you lose a bit here and there, but you gain more because people are more committed to you. They know that you're not taking them for a ride, and I think it just needs to be dragged into the 19th century, basically. The opera business is a long way behind on human resources type things that seem obvious, holidays and time off and schedules. We do this thing at our place with schedules. Most opera companies give out schedules on the Friday before the next week. Ours go out 3 months in advance, because these days people have got childcare, parental care, appointments, and it's trying to make it a bit more real life. And
and you hear so often from singers who are working, with great companies and just won't be told until a few days before when they're rehearsing, with no consideration for the lives they might have.
Absolutely, but I think the biggest problem with that is the company would know. The company would know what they were doing. It's just a hangover from being secretive or director's discretion. And some of my best friends are directors, but they all know that I say this, that it can't all be the director's choice. The director works for the company and then they go. It has to be the company's choice. And they say to the director, you've got to do it 3 months in advance. People then start saying, well, we can't do that. And I was saying variations of, the last time I looked, there wasn't a shortage of directors. So I'll go to someone who will do that. But everyone went for it, and now it's just taken as read at our place anyway.
Yeah. What happens to the podcasts? I mean, do people carry on listening to them? You can get all that data. I mean, they're there, aren't they, as a wonderful archive, a kind of way of charting now 6 years at OHP.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the rest of history is never going to be worried about our numbers, but I think that there's a relatively small loyal group. But some people come up to in the theatre and say, I listened to that one with that singer, and it meant something to me then, and it's just there. But it's trying to sort of take the curtain down, really, and just say, this is what we're trying to do behind. Because most people you talk to about the industry, once you start explaining things, they really understand. But it's easy to criticize from the outside about anything, prices, rehearsals, what shows you're doing, anything creative is easy to criticize. But once you explain it, on the whole, people understand a bit more.
Yeah, well, it's great that you're able to do that. We're going to move on from the podcast and talk about you. We're here at Honey & Co. in Bloomsbury. And I should have said, although I imagine you can probably hear, we've got a fabulous audience with us this evening. Let's have a little round of applause just to prove that you're all here. And these are a great lovers, supporters, patrons, people who are passionate about OHP.
Absolutely. So basically, if you're not here, you haven't been invited, you probably should have given us more money. But I think
you passed the test. Ladies and gentlemen,
but it's a small, intimate group, but very, very, very supportive. And a company like ours is based on supporters. It just has to be.
Yeah, your parents are here as well, and I saw a lovely picture yesterday of you on the internet with your dad, who successfulthat completed the Royal Parks half marathon.
Indeed, 83.
Yeah, where were you in this race?
I said that for those that don't know, the half marathon is 13.1 miles, and I said I probably couldn't do the 0.1 these days. But it was a great day. The whole family were there celebrating. It was a beautiful day.
Yeah, gorgeous pictures in front of the Royal Albert Hall. The reason I mention your parents, other than to say it's fabulous to have you here, was the music in your house growing up? I mean, was there an obvious connection to opera or not?
Not to classical music. There was music continuously. I think my mum, particularly for that, there's music always around. And they gave me a really good grounding in what I would call the classic artists of the non-classical things. I mean, I was brought up on my first memory of anything is the day my sister was born. It's a bit too early for memories, really, because she's only 3 years younger than me. But it's so clear because it was a big day, and they were playing Beatles' Get Back, which was just out that month. And my aunt was there. She's Jo, and it was like Get Back Jojo, and it just felt that there's the little band, the family band, And I remember that day so clearly. And so that sort of music was always around, and then Sinatra and Elvis and Ella Fitzgerald and all that side. It was music was everywhere.
Yeah.
We used to have a lot of parties at home, and music was a massive part of it. But it wasn't a classical thing. It really was much later when I heard, well, it's a weird one. I heard the Glissando or the A Day in the Life, Sgt. Pepper. And it was such a change orchestrally. And I just thought, that's really interesting. It was about 12 or something. And started investigating that, but only as really sort of in the background. It was much, much later when there was any real interest in it.
But you went into theatre. I mean, that was your route in opera is theatre, but you went into a broader form of theatre. So was that part of your young life? Did you have a sort of toy theatre?
No, it's really strange. I really only wanted to be a musician at the beginning, guitarist or whatever. And
you were playing?
Yeah.
In bands?
Yeah, in bands. But I think that I always
we have a name of a band?
No.
Go on. There must be something really... No. There clearly is something very awkwardly embarrassing.
Everyone's got 14-year-old bands and they stay where they are. But I think that I only ever really wanted to play to write songs.
Yeah.
And I never really got any better. I don't mean in a self-deprecation way. I didn't get any better as a musician because I just wanted to be able to write, and that was it. And that was enough for me. And then when that wasn't really going to work, I really then wanted to write music somehow. And even though I'm not a mad fan of it now, I saw Les Miserables really relatively early, about 87, 86 or something. And so I'm not a great fan of it now, but at that moment it changed my life. And I thought, okay, that wide canvas, a big canvas of storytelling, music can be done. And I started writing a musical, which I wrote with my oldest friend Damien, and we wrote a musical on the Life of Oscar Wilde. And I was working at that point, but I just thought, I'm never going to have a chance to do this again. I was 23. Let's give it all up for a year and see if we can do this. And we did, and we got it produced, and it was on, and I'm still very proud of it. But it just was never going to make that break. And
what was wrong with it?
I don't think much is wrong with it in a way, but it's incredibly difficult to get a musical produced. I mean,
getting it staged is miraculous.
Well, it was probably about 30 performances in various forms. So in the great scheme of musicals, it was relatively successful because most of them don't get performed.
I mean, lots of Stephen Sondheim shows didn't run for
40
shows on their first act.
But I think that we, and I remember at the end of it, someone was saying to me, what are you going to do now? You're going to write another musical? And I was saying, no. I've used every single tune and every lyric could ever imagine in one show.
Let's break that down a bit more. Just tell us a bit more, because I mean that is an amazing thing to have done. If you did nothing else, you wrote a musical that was professionally produced.
Yeah. Well, I think that...
Where was it done? What was the process?
It was done at the Classical Theatre, as was, in Kilburn.
Yep.
So done the Buxton Festival, Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
It was done in the Intimate Theatre in Palmer's Green initially, where we live now. And then it was done in Ireland. And then it was done, a couple of amateur groups did it. So it's been performed a few times. So I'm proud of it. Very proud of it. But I was very green. I was writing music as a pop writer, really. I didn't have real orchestration. I'd get someone else to orchestrate it. And but at the end of it all, so I say someone saying, "What are you going to do? You're going to write another one?" I said, "I just can't. It's just too hard." And but they were saying, "What else? What did you like about it?" And I said, "I loved the booking, the singers and the rehearsals, and I loved the talking to the lighting designer and all that sort of stuff." And I remember exactly where I was. I was in Oscar's Wine Bar, funnily enough, in Leicester Square.
I remember that.
Do you remember that one? Yeah. And they said, "That's what a producer does." And I thought, okay, that sounds like a nice job. And so from there, I did one-person shows, getting bigger and bigger, a few bigger fringe musicals. And then one day, Bill Kenwright, the impresario, came to saw a show. It was a sold-out show. So we needed to get him a seat. So I had to get my dad to move. So he sat next to my mum. And afterwards, he wanted to buy the show. And I refused. I turned him down. And it went on for a while. And the next year he rang me and said, anyone that can treat me like that, I'd rather have working for me than not. So come and work for me. So I moved into the West End doing the similar thing for a couple of years. It was enjoyable, you know, but it was...
Well, let's talk about Bill Cartwright, because he was an amazing figure in theatre. I mean, really key to the success of British theatre, producing fantastic touring material that has kept a lot of provincial theatres going. Had great success, of course, with Blood Brothers. I guess that was his biggest show that ran for such a long time in the West End. He seemed to run his business, people said, like it was kind of a family. And that was good and bad.
I think a family that didn't like each other very much.
Well, that's lots of families.
No, I think that it was interesting. When I was working for Bill, he did he's dead now, God rest him, but he did a Des Island Discs. And whoever was doing the questions then said to him, what do you like to work for? And in a moment of absolute clarity, he said, some days I'm probably the best person in the world to work for, and some days I'm probably the worst. And it was bang on. He could be incredibly charming, wonderful, and I think he was a great producer in many ways, but it was incredibly difficult to work for.
And you told me, I don't know if you want to say this, but you told me a story about him. He would sort of fire you.
Oh, he sacked
on a
me
regular.
so many
How many
times,
times were you sacked?
13, I think.
Yeah. And then the next day he'd be, where are you?
Yeah, where are you? I mean, well, he sacked me 13 times in total, over a 2.5 year period. But he the first time I was really upset, because you think, okay,
Been sacked.
I've been sacked. And he actually rang me down on the internal phones about an hour later and said, so where am I picking you up tomorrow? And I said, he said, we're going to Nice, aren't we? And I said, well, I didn't think I was going to Nice anymore, because you sacked me. I went, oh, don't be daft. And it's funny.
But it's abusive as well, isn't it?
It wasn't great. I mean, I've got a lot of time for his memory. I learned so much there. I was looking after at one point something ridiculous like 30 different shows. Wow. And so when I came to Holland Park and the next bit, and there were 6 operas, everyone there was saying, can you handle 6 shows? And to this day, it's still, that's okay. 6 is fine. When you're doing 30 and international tour, West End touring, but the thing is, you learn a lot there.
I mean, things change, and obviously what was acceptable ceases to become acceptable. But would you say you learnt more from him than anyone else?
Yeah, but
about the business?
Almost, well, probably, certainly, yeah. But I think the biggest part of it was I learned how I didn't want to do it, which is not a great compliment, but it's the truth. I mean, I learned, okay, because he was brilliant. We were directing with him one day, and he was telling us an artist to move from one side of the stage to the other, and the artist said, what's my motivation? He said, because I'm paying you, move over there. And so that's a thing. It's not how most people do it now, but it was then. But I learned a lot of what I didn't want to do, and how you treat with people. And there's not a right or wrong way. He had or has a massive house in Little Venice. We've got a lovely flat in Palmer's Green, but it's how you choose to behave and how you choose to want it. And it made it very clear for me how I wanted to do it.
Did you work for him before mobile phones?
Oh, no.
So I just wonder, I'm intrigued as to how different the world would have been, when 30 shows out on the road, and things going wrong, people going ill, problems with the get-in in one theatre, problems with the box office in another, and how all that was sort of dealt with.
Well, before mobiles, I'm not sure with him, because I didn't have a mobile until I worked for him, but then I did then, but it was 24/7.
So he could call you and sack you.
You were never off. Yeah. You were never off. But also when I should have known really, because when he brought me into his office to talk about working, he said, one of the things I think about you is I don't think you can really talk to power. And I said, I can, because you want a job, And he said, and he gave me a few different bits of how would you deal with this, how would you deal with that? And he said, how would you deal if you had to tell Dame Judi Dench that she had to work 2 days on New Year's Eve, 2 shows on New Year's Eve? I said, yeah, I can do that. So at the end, we packed up. He said, okay, come and work for me. Start tomorrow. The first thing, go and tell Judi Dench she's working 2 days.
How did that go?
Well, I took my immediate senior producer with me, because he saw that it was a trap, and he told her. But it wasn't a great start. But it caught my bluff, I guess.
Yeah. So straight from there to when you finally decided that 13 sacking was enough, straight from there to OHP? Or?
Well, I had it was around March or something. I can't really remember. It was around February or March, and I had a job in September to go to a tour of the musical Billy Liar. I had that sort of set up. And then someone saw, and I just wanted a bit of a break, because it was hard working for Bill. And I had a bit of a break, and someone sent me an advert and said there's a 3-month job at Holland Park in opera. And I did think, I'd worked with a bit of dance at Ken Wright's, and I'd done musicals and plays and cabaret, and opera's a nice little thing to have for a couple of months. I'll do that. And when I, at the end of that period, I just thought, this is what I've been looking for. I didn't know that I was looking for it, but I just thought, and the boss there then, John McKeckin, said to me on the last night, it's a shame you can't stay. And I said, well, if you ask me to stay, I'll stay. So it was a 3-month contract, and that was 25 years ago. So it changed a bit, that contract.
That's great. 3 months becomes quarter of a century. What was Opera Holland Park like at that? I mean, it was still part of the Royal Borough.
Yeah, I mean, it was for a long time the only municipal opera company in the country. It only started as a company in '96, so it was only missed 4 years. It was different, things are different. I mean, the one I tell a lot, which is a bad one because it's such a surprise, is that I said on, as I say, whether it was Feb or March or something, I said, where do we get our chorus from? And the woman who was doing the crossover to keep the job warm said, well, apparently we just wait till they call in and then you tell them where to go. There was no choosing of them. It was just who would do it.
Who would turn up.
We were doing Madame Butterfly that year, which was my first show, and we were in March, and there was no senior casting done at all. We didn't have a butterfly, didn't have a rehearsal room, so it was much more. It was much more as you went, and it took a couple of years. But all the stuff you'd learned in the West End, you just said, okay, we're going to bring this to this a bit, and I think one of the best things I did, it was natural instinct at the time, but one of the best things I did was I never tried to pretend or fake it with anyone that I knew too much about opera. It was that my decision was, I think about it a lot, it was crystal clear when people said, what are we going to do about that? And I would say, what is that? I don't know. It gave me
because I was going to say, I mean, you were working, lots of people who work in opera have been opera obsessives since they were teenagers listening to callous recordings in their bedroom. And this wasn't your story.
No, it wasn't. But I think that's what's made it hopefully relatively successful, because I think that I've got a distance from it. I love it. I love it. I love what I do to this day, and I love listening to it. And I actually, I can correct myself, I love watching it more. I very rarely listen to it at home. I listen to classical music but not opera at home, and still all the Miles Davis and Beatles or whatever, but I don't listen to opera too much at home. It's too much like work. But I can look at it and appreciate the art and appreciate everything that everyone does, but it has to come into a format to make it work these days. And because especially as a non-subsidized company, the thing was in opera across the board, and certainly at Holland Park, then we could spend whatever you wanted and someone was going to cover it. It can't work like that anymore. It just can't. And much bigger companies at Holland Park have found that out over the last few years. And so I think it was just let's just bring some order and but also creativity in a different way, and how we're going to look at things rather than just do it exactly as everyone else did it. I think I still try that. I still like to look at it every year as though, what could we do? I was with Stephen Langridge at Glyndebourne about 10 years ago. We were at a conference, an opera conference, and an American boss of an opera company said he loved this constructive. I'm going to forget it now. I use it all the time. It's ridiculous. But I think that breaking something up and looking at it and saying, does it actually work?
Yeah.
Does it actually work like that? And if it ends up going all the way back again, that's fine.
But you've got to break it up.
You've got to break it up and look at it. And I think that there's so many things that in opera that have just been like it because they were like it in 1850. And, the world's changed a lot, and it's great to look at it, and creative destruction.
Creative destruction,
And then I think that then you can look at it fresh and think, no, that works. And that is the best way forward. And I think it's really important to keep doing that.
So was there a sort of order to your career progression, or was it a series of happy accidents?
More accidental than planned. I talk to a lot of kids that work coming out of university and that, and the great thing is that because I've done a lot of work at different lower levels, then it all adds up to when you get further up the ladder. I mean, when I was producing for myself, because there was a bit of time that I was just doing fringe stuff, because the nature of it, you ended up doing stage manager or
Did you ever go on?
No, I'd never go on. I did do follow spot once, and on the cans,
You were never the vicar.
I heard the stage manager said,
who walked across the back of the
"Oh
stage.
no, I would never do that." I heard on the cans, the stage manager say, "Oh, James is non-follow spot, is he?" Because it was just going all over the place.
Bit of wobble.
But you just think it's easy if you've done those jobs to have an understanding of what they actually are, and to be able to understand when people are moaning about what they're doing, but also how you can try and make it better. Because it is on the last night of our season, I'd come to bringing as many people backstage as possible on stage for a bow at the end, and everyone says so many people, and it's a fraction of the people that do it. So all those things all make up, and the more you can understand what each department does, even if you can't do it yourself, then you understand what they're doing. I think it's really good.
But it is an amazing thing when you see it and you think, why don't more companies do this?
It has a nice effect, and people love it. But I think it has an effect on an audience to think, okay, well, that's just tonight. All those people, made that happen. I think it's in the film Shakespeare in Love, but it's just a series of so many things going wrong and different things that all happens, and it sort of magically turns up. Although I'm a big fan of, there's a line in Walk the Line, the film about Johnny Cash, where he says, it'll work itself out. And his wife says, no, people work it out, and then you think it's worked itself out. And I think that there is that we look at that and try and break it up. But the great thing about live performance is it's different every night. And the thing that you solved last night is going to be a different problem tomorrow.
Yeah, and not just that, but live performance where the weather has an impact, the noise in the park, the police helicopters going overhead.
Yeah.
You've got so many moving elements to contend with that even more than a traditional theatre.
Yeah, it's October, so they've sort of gone in the back of my mind again for the moment. But yeah, they'll come.
Very
they'll
quiet
come.
here, isn't it? Can't hear
They'll
any
come
peacocks.
back in soon enough. I'm
Can't
sure.
hear any peacocks at all. So you climb up the ladder at Opera Holland Park, and you end up in a duopoly, I think it's fair to say, with Mike Volpe.
Yeah.
And the two of you seem like this kind of amazing creative duo, kind of working together. I mean, I guess again that had its easy moments and its difficult moments, because you were sharing a lot of those creative decisions and inevitably, presumably, arguing over things.
Yeah, sure. But I think that for and I'm sure he'd say exactly the same if he was here. For most of the time, it was better than good. It was really. But I think that there is a creative tension is positive. I think, as long as you don't let it go too far. I mean, I think that I'm always encouraging our team in the office to be able to criticize each other, as long as it's not personal and as long as it's not just destructive. Because from that sort of talk, you can come up with different ideas. And we had lots of falling outs. We had lots of brilliant moments. But for that period of time, he and I are the only people in that room that knew what went on. And that was a special thing. But it was also the right time when he wanted to move on and we wanted to move on in a different direction. It's all good, but it was great at the time, and everything then comes around.
Yeah. Was it a definite in your mind that you would take over as the sole director, as it were, or did you think actually maybe it's time for me to change as well?
Well,
I mean, it seems to me it was the former, talking to you at the time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's what I wanted. I mean, our chairman at the time, Charles, is in here tonight. I think that's what the board wanted at that time as well. But the thing was, it's not a secret. Around that time, I was quite keen to have a more overriding role somewhere. So I would have gone to a few other places around that time. But then having it at the place you'd help build and getting complete control, obviously, is a nice thing. Because however much you get on with someone as a duo, there's bound to be different things you compromise on, as there should be. But when you have it complete control on that, then there's no one else to take the blame, and I think that's a good thing. I quite like that. I'm my own biggest critic, and I know when we're doing it well, I know when we're doing it badly. But I think that it's easier to make decisions to say, let's take a chance, and because I do think you do have to take chances in this, and sometimes they go wrong. But
biggest disaster?
I think probably though, even though it ended up okay, I think that when we lost our tenor in Queen of Spades during the opening performance back in 2006, when he just imploded and by the end couldn't sing at all, and that was watching it.
It's such a personal tragedy.
That was just, oh my, what are we going to do? Because we hadn't made an announcement because he said he was fine. Couldn't make an announcement during it, and he was unable to sing at the end. And that was not only because it was such an embarrassing thing, because it was such a great show, but knowing we had 3 days to correct it when we spent 9 months trying to find a tenor to do it. So that was probably the actual worst moment, like that one, that's without personal losses. That's probably the worst moment, because I just didn't know what we were going to do then. I mean, we did turn it around, but that's at that moment, it was a bad night.
And what about the company? Were there moments when you thought we're getting very close to collapsing here? I mean, surely it feels like it's almost the case with every opera company in this country at some point.
Yeah, I think
25 years.
No, I don't think so. I think that because, in a funny way, because it's always so difficult for us. It always is. That even companies that say they're doing well or they're not doing well. I mean, of anyone at our level and above, we are without doubt the only company that has to literally build their theatre every year. And so, and not only the theatre, but everything around it, all the dressing rooms, all the hospitality areas. And so I think to start off with that as a negative before you start every year is that's the thing so you're always on edge. And I talk a lot about this, and I have more increasingly, that the differences are so slight in that, because we have around, it's not exact, but around, it's easy sums, we have around 2,000 members. And so if each of them just decide to buy one fewer ticket, or a pair of tickets, one fewer ticket each, not even a pair, 2,000 tickets, it's over 2 complete nights sell out for us.
Yeah.
And that's on just everyone just deciding to do one ticket fewer. And so, and obviously since COVID, people go fewer or they go more. And I think that level of insecurity is a problem. But I think because it's there all the time, it's not so much of a problem, because it's in the forefront of mine and everyone's head. We have to look at it. And if you think you've got a £10 million slush fund or the Arts Council or whatever, I think that you can't look at it the same way. It's not as urgent. And my biggest thing on this is, when I was producing for myself, it was my own money, or rather at that point when I was in my early 20s, it became my mum, particularly my dad's money, because rather than sending me, I didn't go to university. It was like, my God, we can't do this show, and there was incredible times around them. But when you've had your own money and you've lost it, you don't forget that. And also working for Bill, because I'm
sure he let you know if you lost his money.
Well, that was his own money as well. He didn't use Angels. So if you had to walk into his office and say, I've just lost £250,000 of your money, you didn't do it again.
Yeah.
And so...
Would you get sacked for that?
I think you wouldn't even get into the office for that, yeah. But I think I think once it's so present in my mind that even though we have bad years, obviously we have good years, but I think it's so present that it doesn't really...
Does that mean you sort of really micromanage the finances? I mean, you hear stories of, in some companies, of shows being budgeted and then directors going way over, designers going way over, whatever. I mean, are you really on top of the spreadsheet?
With the shows, that never happens unless we've said it, because
because you're on top of it, or
yeah, and because it's right from the top. Right at the start, we say
this is the budget. Yeah.
And now we change things because things go wrong, and you adapt to it. But that's a decision. It's not. I think years ago, I mean, it became a bit of a story that people would tell about me, but it started off as a true story, because a designer was saying to me once that they really needed this piece of stage. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, we can't afford it, but I'll pay for half of it if you take half of it out of your salary. And they said, we don't really need it. And I said, okay, okay. And it's the thing that it's not, if it's someone else's money, it's easier to spend. And I always think of it's not my money, it's the company's money, but I think of it as my money. And so when we're in those meetings, and the finance meetings, we've got a great finance director, Becky, and the team will tell you, we have sometimes daily meetings on the sales. I mean, I get the sales figures 3 times a day. And because I know when we've sold 12 tickets or whether they've sold 200, because it means something. Because when that sleight of hand we're talking about such a small amount making such a difference is really important.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the state of opera in this country, and we've had some conversations, perhaps sometimes into the second bottle, of what we would do to make it all wonderful, and the magical companies we'd set up, and the fabulous provision we'd create to have maybe even a quarter of the way to a German situation with 60 odd opera companies spread around the country. Do we not like opera really in this country?
I think it's not an absolute part of cultural heritage in the way it is in Italy or Germany. I think that's just a fact. And I think that, and because it's like anything, there's a book by my wife Angela's a food writer, and one of her friends wrote a book years ago called First Taste. B. Wilson wrote this book about there's a small window at the beginning of a life where you could more or less like any food if you were given it in the right way, but after that window's gone, it's gone. And I think that's the thing with it here, and mainly it's down to education. Because I went to a primary school, Catholic school, right opposite the Spurs ground. So obviously I'm a Spurs supporter, right opposite the Spurs ground, and in the middle of Tottenham. So in the 70s, so that was what that was. But every single day in assembly, we'd have the deputy head would play a symphony or something as we were coming in. We just get to know it a bit, and he was saying, "Oh, it's Beethoven's Fifth or whatever." Even that light touch, we got nowhere near that now, nowhere near it. And so we go into a lot of schools. We have school matinees. We sell out school matinees at our place, but it's the everyday thing that's the trouble. And because what we try and do is not turn everyone onto opera, because I think that's a sort of pointless quest, but it's trying to give them the confidence to say whether they like it or not. Because there's a lot of reverse snobism as well. People say they won't like it.
Yeah,
they won't like it. And our kids, when you see our school matinees, the kids they haven't got that it's meant to be posh or anything at that point. They just watch it and they go, "Oh, I like the story," and then they lose it again after that. But I think when they just present it with it well, they enjoy it. When they present it with it badly, it's boring. But that's the same for us all, And I think that it's just the education's the thing, and that's what we try to do a lot at the company. But it's the biggest thing about just confidence of liking music and hearing music and saying I like this or I don't. And people always say to me, "So you love opera?" And I said, "Well, not all of it, because you can't." And so I think that there's a lot to be said for that, just giving people the chance to listen to it and be involved in it more. And if they choose to like it or not, it's a different thing, but it just becomes a regular thing.
Are you optimistic about where it is as an art form in this country? I mean, lots of people in the business think that the Arts Council have it in for opera. There are all sorts of suggestions, aren't there, about how more and more opera work is now at country house operas that difficult to get to, expensive, etc. I mean, in a way, what you're doing is kind of still has the best bits of that old municipal open access model that Opera Holland Park had right at the beginning. Certainly also had.
Yeah, I think the thing is that times have changed so much. So even when I started, which obviously is a long time ago now, but it doesn't feel that long. So 25 years ago. Then at Glyndebourne, you then still had to be on a list to become a member to buy a ticket. Yeah, there was that.
And you couldn't get unless you were on the list. People waited for relatives to leave them their position on the list.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was only 25 years ago. And what happened to that is that we all happened, us and Garsington and the Granges, and when all of those happened. So that experience can be transferred, and so in a way, it's more popular than it was. In some ways, because so many of those companies, possibly too many, are working but we're all working at the same time. That's the real drag of it, because if we
lots of work in the summer,
and everyone that works for me and trustee wise knows that I really would love to do something in the winter, because in the summer you're fighting for the singers, the stage management, the critics, the audience, and we're still being successful. But in the winter, with the way other companies have gone, there are more gaps, and all those singers and all those artists have got not as much to do. So I think that it's just an imbalance. People still love it, but they love the occasion. And I do think generally in all forms of leisure industry, that people want the experience more and more. It's the experience. It's not just a bit of it. And even though some people, probably my colleagues in other companies that listen to this, will say, I'm completely lost the plot on this, but I keep saying to my team that we need to get to the point where everything else is so special that if you didn't like the opera, that we've given you that night, you could still have had a great evening. Everything else is great. And then if you love the opera, it's a fantastic night. But we have to get to a point where just turning up, paying your money and coming along and you don't like it, it's just going to put people off. We have to work on all the details so much, and which we try.
One of the things that always excites me is seeing opera reinventing itself, new opera. The Royal Opera has had great success recently with Feston. You've had great success over 2 seasons now with Itch by Jonathan Dove, which I think is a cracking piece of theatre.
It's a good piece.
You might not even call it opera, but I think it is truly operatic. But it feels like that was something you were really proud about, and for you it's quite an important part of the company that you will discover things. They might be old Verismo operas that are never done, or they might be brand new pieces like this.
Yeah, I think that with Itch, because I am particularly fond of it because I commissioned it. But I think that it was, and so many of the things that we worked on around that was that having an opera where people in the audience, particularly younger people, could see themselves represented on stage. Because there's a family on it. It's not just the kids, there's a family, there's teachers. And I think just having something of now that was not so stylized, it was just a story of now that just happened to be in extraordinary circumstances. But I think, there's, I'm not going to remember the exact figure now, unfortunately, because even though I was looking at the board report today, but Itch, we didn't sell as many tickets for Itch as we'd like, but it had the biggest amount of first-time visitors to us ever.
So you may have lost money on it, but...
Well, I should say on that though, Petrol, with any opera, that I often say this: if opera as an entity wasn't invented and it came into the Dragon's Den, it would not get through the first 30 seconds. I mean, because no one makes money on it. It's the thing. That's why the Opera House and and everyone gets money. So it's a really difficult thing to make.
But it's
money.
a relative deficit, isn't it? And I guess the point I'm making is that it's not just about the money. It's about the impact that had, what it said about the company and the people who came into Opera Holland Park.
Yeah, it's the reputational difference. It's the different people you reach, because you can't always continue to get the same people to come. You have to make them very welcome and make them want to come back more and more. But rather than just trying to get people that go to other opera companies, which is possible but tricky, bringing new people in. I think it was a really high figure. It was about 30% of people that came to see us this year were first-time visitors to us. So, and we had an event last week, first time we've done this. So we only invited people that had been to us for the first time this year. It was a new thing that we worked on. And people coming in excited because they'd come once. We'd written to them and said, we loved having you. Why don't you come out for a drink with us and find out more about it? It was a sold out night. They didn't have to pay, but it was a sold out night. And people were all talking about all the shows. And one of the ones they talked about the most was Itch, because people said, it was just so relaxed, so great to see this. And so it's about impact as much as you can, because once again, referring to my wife's job more, that it's a complete balance of recipes. If you're doing a season, you can't just do hit massive, because you'd run out in about 3 years and everyone would get bored with seeing the same things, and you've seen them everywhere else. So you try and bring new things in here, an unusual thing there, and you can't just keep going after the same audience all the time. You just bring new people into different ones. It's a whole balancing act. But, and I'm always the first one to say when we've got it right and when we've got it wrong, but you don't know until you've done it, really.
We're into the last couple of minutes, and I think a lot of what you've said this evening feels like a kind of the Clutton manifesto for where opera should be, personified through what you're doing at Opera Holland Park. And I've always been very excited by that, by your passion, by your ideas, by your creative openness. If I were the board of Opera Holland Park today, I'd be thinking, 25 years, is it going to go off somewhere else soon?
Well, there's a few for me. You should ask them afterwards.
I mean, what will you stay? I mean, you could clearly be doing things on a grander scale.
Yeah, I think that in reality, I'm very, very happy having the control I've got now and where we are. I think that probably, being brutally honest, the time to go somewhere else is probably past.
How old are you?
Petroc Trelawny.
It's not answering.
I'm coming up to quite a big birthday. So
50.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that because, and rightly so in some ways, not in others, there's a continual quest for the next generation, what you're going to do in different ways. And I think that going back to one of my things I said earlier about big canvases, we've got a big canvas now. I personally have a big canvas to do. I've got a lot of people that work for me for a long time. I mean, there's a core of people who work for me. I've got maybe 4 people that have worked for me for 10, 12 years. And so it's a tight team. We're doing good stuff that we believe in. And so I'm very happy with that. 10 years ago would have been different. But I think those things just didn't work. And sometimes they don't work for a reason. And
well, that's very exciting. I think that your commitment and your passion remains undimmed. This is episode 100 of From the Producer's Office. Who's going to be on 101? Do you know that yet?
It's a difficult. It's a bit of poison chance. I'm not sure. We've got a few ideas for some people.
But you're keeping it going.
Yeah. I think that we're looking at, as we've said a few times during this, reinventing it a bit, changing it. Because when you mentioned guests earlier on, you didn't mention your good self. You've been a guest on the podcast.
Great pleasure. Yeah.
So, but I think it's just keeping it moving and changing. It's one of the things I've said all night. It's constantly moving and seeing what happens, and then we can do it. But at the moment, it's going to be re-energized, I think, and hopefully tonight might do a bit of that.
Good. Well, it's been a great pleasure being guest host of From the Producer's Office. I'm Petroc Trelawny. He's James Clutton. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.